The NFL draft is all over, and the Bears have themselves a brand new rookie class headed to Hallis Hall, and they've done their introductions. They're rocking and rolling, and maybe it's not what everybody expects it to be, but we're going to break it all down and talk about what Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson, and the rest of the Chicago Bears front office and coaching staff came away with to get ready for the 2025 season. Welcome into the Bear Report. I'm Steven Johnson. He is Zack Pearson. And Zack, you spent a lot of time up at Hallis Hall this past week.
Oh,
And
man.
I gotta wonder what was the mood like up there, all things considered? Because it seems as though there is a very divided fan base currently in the greater Chicago area.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like a lot of uncertainty compared to previous years. Like, I think we kind of knew, last year we knew it was Caleb Williams. We kind of had a hint it was probably going to be Roma Dunze or like another offensive tackle. Year before, the Jalen Carter, Darnell Wright stuff, but it was hectic. It was kind of just uncertainty, kind of wondering what they're going to do. Saturday is always the worst day. It's loaded as it is. You get the pick. You get to talk to a scout. You get to talk to the player. They make another pick over and over. You're doing research. You got to write. We were trying to podcast. It's hard. It's a lot going on. So trying to get a read on what the Bears were going to do was a little tough. Especially that third day, you're just kind of just like throw everything out the window. They're either going to trade back, they're going to take some guys that kind of, fit what they want to do. They're going to definitely take a guy you're kind of surprised by. And they're going to look for some depth. But I think the theme was, when are they going to take the running back? Who are they going to take at number 10? What were they going to do in the later rounds? And were they going to try and get more picks? And, I don't know about you. I think it's kind of a general rule, I think, is like we kind of have to wait a couple years to kind of see how the draft class actually is. But still, I think they did a fine job of addressing some needs and probably sticking to their board in what was, a weird draft, man. Like, leading up to it, it was kind of a weird draft for everyone.
It definitely was. And just kind of looking at the way that the board fell overall, it's extremely clear that the Bears ended up going best player available quite a few times over the course of the 3 days of the draft, just based on some of the picks. And let's go one by one. Let's break everything down. If there's any questions that pop up in the meantime when it comes to what's going on with the Bears and how they came away with their draft class, feel free to drop those in wherever you're watching, whether it's across YouTube, Facebook, or on Twitter with the Bear Report. And then obviously always check us out at thebearreport.com for all the coverage. And off the top, we talked about this during the live coverage, Nick Whalen and myself, on Thursday night, that the worst case scenario probably unfolded for the board for the Bears over the course of the first 9 picks, where everything was pretty status quo. The exception, I don't think a ton of people were expecting Jacksonville to unload the farm to go up and get Travis Hunter. To each their own. But on top of that, Ashton Genty obviously going to the Raiders, which was kind of the assumed situation. They didn't overthink it. And then it was 3 tackles off the board by 9. And a point to which, do the Bears go 4th best available tackle, or do they go with the best player on the board? And that in itself was the spark of the controversy immediately out of the gate. Going with Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. And for a lot of the lead up to the draft, everything was about Tyler Warren out of Penn State as the guy. There were interviews with Ben Johnson out there talking up Tyler Warren as this great player. And then a hard pivot. And all of a sudden, it turns out the Bears' number 1 tight end on the board was Colston Loveland.
Yeah, well, leading into the draft, we kind of saw like there was rumors that the Bears were looking to move up. It ended up probably being a smokescreen because the Jaguars obviously had a plan. They said for 2 weeks to move up. There was kind of a trade in place to grab Travis Hunter. So I don't think the Bears actually really got close to moving up. I think ideally, we saw, look at what these teams paid. Not only the the Jaguars to move up in the first round, but like you saw a couple teams in the back end of the first round move up, and Atlanta gave up a first round pick.
Oh, that
Who was
was a
the other?
bad trade.
Yeah, that was a bad one. There's another team that moved up and gave up a first round pick. I know the Eagles moved up one spot. They didn't give up a first round next year, but the price just wasn't there. And then, like you said, I think the Bears were expecting 2 to 3 tight ends to go by the time they were getting ready to pick or how the draft started, because I think Will Campbell kind of became a lock to New England to protect Drake May. And I think it was going to be, do the Saints like, Kelvin Banks enough to take him, and Ramzak is not coming back. Spencer Penning didn't get his option picked up. And then when you saw that news, you're kind of like, okay, here comes Tyler Ward. And then boom, Colston Loveland. And I get it. Like, I understand now why they took him. And, from what I heard and everything I know is that they had them both even on their board, essentially, to start. And the ability for Colston Loveland to separate his hands as a receiver kind of pushed him over the edge. And now looking at it, and I know we talked about it on our draft show with Nikki Sade, I think most of us said, like, Colston Loveland is going to be a really good tight end. And now looking at this, I can see why they went Colston Loveland and what Ben Johnson wants for his offense. His comp is literally Sam Laporta. And now you're going to be able to have Cole Kmet, Loveland, and when those guys are in the game, you're going to open up opportunities for someone like Roma Dunze, DJ Moore. Loveland is actually watching his tape and looking back. I honestly didn't do a lot of research on him going into the draft as much as I should have. But looking at his tape now over the weekend at the draft settled, he kind of looks, I'm not saying Brock Bowers, but he looks more Bowersy in terms of like where he can line up and receiving ability in a way. He's got a lot to live up to be Brock Bowers, but
a little bit.
Yeah, he kind of fits what the Bears want to do in terms of receiver. And I'll tell you what, man, watching those Michigan quarterbacks play last year,
it was definitely rough.
Oh my God, dude, he should have had at least another 100, 200 yards, probably 15, 20 more receptions. There's one play I saw someone post on Twitter. He ran like a corner route, beat the safety, was wide open, and the quarterback airmailed him by like 20 yards. It was so bad.
Yeah, it was brutal to watch the Michigan offense this past season. But even prior to that, when JJ McCarthy was still in Michigan, this was a player that was profiled pretty highly within that offense. And again, just you see the fluidity of his movements, and again, getting open, not necessarily having to be a go up and get it guy, where yes, he has the height, he has the ability to do that, but it's also nice when you don't have to rely on that to pick up the yardage. And there's all the talk, well, they just gave Cole Kmet all this money. This doesn't make any sense. Why would they do this? Well, the two things, and I know one, it's like a broken record across the entire landscape right now. It's the 12 personnel with Ben Johnson. In fact, there are 2 tight ends on the field rather often under Ben Johnson's offense. And this is something where not only are they getting a second receiving weapon, they're getting one that arguably right out of the gate has a much more mature route tree to his repertoire versus Cole Kmet, where it's more of a schemey situation where you need to get him open. This is someone that you can let loose down the field and make sure that, he can put his talents to use. This is a much more athletic player than Cole Kmet. And I love Cole Kmet. I think he has the ability, and there's a lot he hasn't tapped into that Ben Johnson will get into. But this is next level, and it adds a whole bunch of uncertainty to what opposing defenses can expect with this type of player at his disposal. And it's to an extent kind of frustrating. And there was like the pre-draft talk, like, oh, you remind me of Sam Laporta with the talk with Ben Johnson. And like, I hate that talk. It drives me nuts. Like, I don't want to hear it. I get it. But for a lot of the folks out there that are jumping on the whole, why do this? This wasn't a need. This wasn't that. Like, if this is clearly the offense that Ben Johnson is going with. And yes, Ben Johnson said there wasn't going to be a lot of what you saw in Detroit. It was going to be a different offense. No, it's not. It's going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
We're going to see the same scheming. We're going to get what's comfortable for Ben Johnson and build around the strengths of this roster. And this roster is significantly stronger now because of this.
Yeah.
Durham Smythe was not going to do this type of stuff.
That's
You
what
have
people
a much
forget,
more
man.
prolific weapon.
Yeah. That's what people forget. They're like, "Oh, they have Cole Kmet," but yeah, look who they had. The tight end behind him was Durham Smythe. Like,
Right.
that's not going to happen. And the goal on offense, you want to create mismatches for the defense. And now, sure, you could have had a tight end that's like Mercedes Lewis was a big blocking tight end with Cole Kmet. Okay, yeah, but you also have now Colson Loveland who can block, but now he could be a receiving threat. You want to create those mismatches on the defense. You want to be able to put those two tight ends out there and have Roma Dunze one-on-one with a cornerback or something similar. DJ Moore one-on-one with a cornerback. You want to have DeAndre Swift having a mismatch. You want to have Cole Kmet and Colson Loveland having mismatches. So I'm excited to see what Ben Johnson kind of cooks up. And you saw the comment we just highlighted. Ben is about to unleash some sorcery. I mean, we've already seen him literally run a trick play against the Bears where they were fumbling the ball on purpose, essentially. So,
I
yeah,
hated that
I think
play
it
so
makes
much.
sense. I think the thing about the whole need and trade up and trade back is yeah, the Bears trade back, but who's coming up for someone? We saw the report that once Colson Loveland was off the board, the phone stopped ringing for a lot of teams. So that tells you how honestly, I think if the Bears would have traded back, someone else would take. I think multiple teams would have taken him over Tyler Warren, which kind of says something. Yeah. So the trading back thing, I think I was fine with staying put and taking a tight end. I have some other issues that they could address that we'll move on to later, but I like the pick. I hope it works out. He seems like a great guy. He's kind of got that Idaho, tough, quote unquote, he says.
Yeah.
He's going to be in for a total shock when he gets, he's been in Detroit, but when he gets to Chicago, it's totally different out there. He's like, pick the smallest Illinois town you can find. And that's what Goodings, Idaho is. And I'm like, there's towns in Illinois that are like 100 people unincorporated. We kind of got that here, but no,
Just
I
stick
think
them up in Antioch or up in the lakes in the
yeah,
north
yeah.
suburbs and
What's
call
that?
it a day.
Where we grew up? Where's that little town near Cherry Valley? You ever drive by there and there's it says population 15 or something like that.
Oh,
I
jeez.
can't think of what it is. It's got a church. That's it, and a couple houses, and it's
Real okay. Now I'm
yeah,
gonna be thinking about that the whole time, trying to think of where that was.
yeah. I can't
Uh,
think of the name.
but it is interesting though that whole situation that occurred where all of a sudden the trade offers just stopped coming, and the talk was that about half the teams had Loveland ahead of Warren on the board, and it's unique to see such a split like that, especially for a player like Loveland who kind of came on late to the process in terms of getting his draft stock up. And it's also surprising as well because Warren's really kind of a 1-year wonder when it comes to the stats that he put up, when you have Loveland on the other hand, where he had the consistency over the course of his career at Michigan. And even in the games that he didn't play in last year, and for as terrible as the Michigan offense was all around, it was even worse with him not on the field. So it shows you that there was some capability there, that they couldn't even muster 200 total passing yards over 3 games in the 3 games that he missed last year.
We should note Ryan Poles said, I don't know if anyone caught it after the Thursday night in his press conference. He said when they studied JJ McCarthy last year because they're doing their due diligence on all the quarterbacks, they knew they were taking Caleb. You have to watch the tape.
Yeah.
They said Loveland's a guy who stood out to them last year. So I wonder if they kind of had in the back of their minds, okay, this guy's going to be available. Probably not planning for it, but they had some familiarity with him, so they kind of made it a little bit easier in terms of, because there was no Penn State quarterback to scout last year coming out of the draft.
No, not at all. And the obviously the one big concern, he had right shoulder surgery
Yeah.
back in January to repair an AC joint in his right shoulder, and supposedly going to be ready and cleared by training camp. That's going to be the big question mark kind of hanging over his head until we get to training camp. If there are any setbacks with that, there's going to be those rumblings about, oh, was this the right pick? And what do we do? And, obviously you don't want to be, stuck behind the 8 ball in your rookie season. You want to ramp up. You want to be a part of that process. You want to get into things on the right foot. And I would hope, all things considered, that does end up happening.
Yeah.
And again, the surgeon even sending a letter out saying that he should be cleared. So if the surgeon is feeling that strong about it, and it's not just the player and his agent sending out this letter to every single team, I would hope that carries some additional weight, but we'll see. I overall grade wise though, because it still kind of shocked me that they went that route. I
Yeah.
get it. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense to me. But in terms of a grade, what would you give it?
Yeah, man, it's hard. Like I don't really like giving A's for draft picks right away, just because like we don't know. I mean, like
Right.
I think Caleb Williams got an A. You kind of knew like you had to take it. I think the situation matters. I would probably say for Loveland, I'd say it's a B plus. I'm a little more strict on the grades. Ideally, maybe they got an offensive tackle, but all three were gone. Membu wasn't, he's a right tackle. He wasn't kind of, from what I heard,
So
not
happy
high
he
on,
was not there.
yeah, and he was not high on the Bears board anyway. They loved Campbell. Banks was high. Yeah, I feel like a B plus. I'm fine with that. I think that's kind of appropriate grade.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with the B. It feels as though it is setting them up for what we're to expect
Yeah.
this upcoming season. You just need to see that next step forward. You want to see him gain some weight on that frame. I think that's the biggest thing right now that we really need to see is adding another 10, 15 pounds, that muscle to really drive him down the field and be a force to be reckoned with down the middle of the field as well. But, you can't argue much. But, I will say this, all things considered, because there were rumors about them potentially thinking about trading back up into the first round. They didn't go that route. They entered day 2 second-round picks and a third-round pick, and they finagle that into 3 second-round picks, getting back into the fourth with the trade with Buffalo. But I can't help but feel the story of day 2 and day 3, they were getting sniped at
100%.
running back.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, for what I know, and I'll tell you this concrete info. They love Travion Henderson. They wanted Travion Henderson. And where did he go? The
New
pick
England.
right before them.
Yeah.
And another team I think there was just a team today. There was someone talked today and said that they praised Henderson's pass blocking. Like, yeah, New England's got a stud. It was another team's coach or general manager. I can't remember who it was. They love Travion Henderson. I think he would have been the pick there at 39 they were at.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would have been the pick. He went right before. I'm sure they probably tried to call up and in New England and offer something, but we saw what the price was to move up in the second round too. It was crazy. And so, you're looking a couple times it happened. I mean, Henderson, Scadaboo, the kid James from Oregon, the running back from Oregon, he was taken right before they traded back. So yeah, I mean, they wanted a running back. Obviously, we all kind of saw that, but their guy, like you said, they got sniped, and it's just unfortunate. I feel like the draft. I feel like, as I found with the Loveland pick, I feel like offensive tackle is probably the top spot they wanted to address at 10. And I feel like they're almost getting sniped at multiple different positions, and the board just didn't fall how they wanted it to. But when the board comes to you, you still find some good picks. And who'd they get? 39. Luther Burden, the third, is sitting there. I mean, that was kind of the surprising pick, right? Would you agree that was the surprising pick of the draft?
It was surprising, and I had to go back because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I know that, Tet McMillan was the number one wideout in this class by all accounts.
Besides
But
Hunter.
besides Hunter, I don't, we still don't even know what he's
Yeah.
going to play.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
like the crazy thing is there's already 2026 way too early mock drafts that are out.
Oh boy.
Luther Burden was a top 5 pick a year ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we're talking about an electric player that for as quickly as the running backs went off the board in round 2, there is no reason why Luther Burden should have been sitting there for the Bears. And I cannot blame them for taking him.
Yeah.
It was one of those kind of deer in the headlight moments for me because I'm like, wide receiver. And then I had to sit there and I had to think about it. But think about what the rest of the Bears roster currently is. You
Yeah.
have DJ Moore, you have Roma Dunze, and your wide receiver 3 is Olamide Zaccheaus.
Yeah.
Maybe Devin Duvernay.
Tyler Scott's still there. Like
I think
it's
Tyler
not.
Scott's buried to 6 on the depth chart now.
Yeah.
He's
It's
probably fighting for his life on the depth chart now, with all things considered.
to,
And it made so much sense because now you plug in a guy like Luther Burden who has comps to Deebo Samuel, who has comps to DJ Moore, the yards after catch, the gadget player that can line up all over the field. Again, going back to the comment that we saw earlier in the chat, sorcery,
yeah.
because Ben Johnson has so much more available at his fingertips from a like a passer perspective and who he can throw out there at receiver. I mean, they needed a wide receiver 3, and they arguably, got someone who is the most NFL ready right now
Yeah.
at the position in this class.
They got a first round talent who essentially fell because people want to say bad attitude on the field. And Missouri had such a disappointing year last year after like a year up where in 2023 they kind of took the next step. And it was funny because Pat Finley sits right next to me in the media room, and he went to Missouri, and we were talking, and the Patriots came up and we're like, man, Luther Burden's like, that's a weapon for Drake May right there. And they take Henderson, and we're both like, oh wow, like okay, like maybe Burden's going to continue to fall. And they take Burden, and we're both like, oh wow, like okay, it makes sense. I think it did make sense to some people because you look at it, and when we were talking wide receiver in this draft, myself included, we're thinking day 3, maybe with that 4th pick on day, what was day 2? They were supposed to have 4 picks, or
Yeah,
their 4th pick would have been on day 2. You thought like a speedster there, but with Luther Burden sitting there, and I mean, look, okay, so they're picking what, 39. You look at the guys still there. Tyler Shuck goes right after him. Mason Taylor,
what was
the
that,
tight
by
end.
the way?
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing.
Okay, sorry.
I don't know
Only
what
mention
they're
of that.
doing. And people say like the Saints should tank. Next year's class, Dan Orlovsky put out that tweet. It's not very good. He's like hyping up this class, and I'm like, what? And Arch Manning, I mean, he could stay another year. Like he hasn't definitively come out and said, oh yeah, I'm ready to leave. But anyway, that's a story for another day. But like they had Alfred Collins sitting there at 43. They probably could have gone, but they also could have gone Alfred Collins at 41 and stayed put. So
Yeah.
JT Tulamalu went a couple picks later. Will Johnson, he's got injury issues. Nick Scourton. I get the argument like on a defensive end, but I think, dude, I think Luther Burden's better than those players. I think he's gonna be a really good wide receiver. And honestly, I'm not even like Jaden. Who was it? Jaden Higgins at Iowa State. I mean, he went before Burden. Matthew Golden, like, and not to rub it in Packers fans' faces, but like people had a 2nd round grade on him, and some like, I don't know. I think Luther Burden. I think, like you said, like I said, the character concerns, quote unquote, on the field, the production drop, that caused him to kind of fall. But they got a guy who you watch at Missouri, dude. He gets the ball in his hands and he is gone. And not only as a receiver, but he did it as a punt returner too. And I think that's the type of guy you see. It gets kind of corny with social media, but he's posting at midnight, him and his girlfriend, or she's putting the ball in the jugs machine, and he's catching passes for a couple hours at Missouri. You're like, okay, this guy's kind of pissed off. And I think when we got to talk to him, a lot of people saw that interview as essentially like, oh, he doesn't want to be a Bear. No, I think he was just ticked off that like he fell that far. And, the Bears now have a pretty good, if he pans out, the Bears have a pretty good 1, 2, 3 for at least 2 to 3 seasons here.
Right. And not only that, but I think you're also probably looking at your kick returner. in that sense as well, just because of the capabilities that he has. It's 4.4 speed. He ran very well at the combine, a 4.41. And again, just what he's able to do from all over the field, the yards after catch, the rushing. He's a two-time first team All SEC. He was second team All American in 2023. I mean, he just putting up stat after stat after stat. And again, the big struggle with him, again, just kind of stopping the routes if he knew it wasn't going to, go his way, or if the play
Yeah.
wasn't going to turn around. And I'd have to imagine that is going to be qualmed quickly
Yeah,
for
Antoine
once he gets
Randall's
into camp.
not going to put up. Yeah, he's not going to put up with that. And well, Steve Smith Senior and James Plummer have a podcast, and they talked. Steve Smith talked to him. He said, when I watch, he goes, I think he said he likes Luther Burden, but when he watches him, he sees a little. The ball's not coming his way. It's not full go. So yeah, I'm curious to see, but I think that gets fit. I mean, that's something you can get fixed at the next level. And I think you're giving Antoine Randall a guy now that he can work with and motivate. I mean, I talked to Antoine Randall on the side when we had like a little coaches availability. Guy was motivating me, man. I'm like, he is like the real deal. So,
Yes.
I mean, you kind of got, your Amron St. Brown type figure or your Jamison Williams type in this offense. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Burden fits in right away.
Yeah, but I know you said you don't want to give out A's for players. To me, this is an A.
Yeah, A minus for me
For as much as you want to put it, again,
because of the value.
The value was immense. Again, talking about someone who's considered a first-round pick, arguably a top 10 pick a year ago. Yeah, has a down season and a bad offense in Missouri, still has all the intangibles, a five-star recruit coming out of high school, turns it into an All-American, All-Conference 2 years in a row, still putting up great numbers, fantastic tape. If you haven't watched it, highly recommend you do. Luther Burden is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this Bears offense, and I cannot wait to see how he's utilized.
Should have been Caleb Williams' teammate at Oklahoma too.
Yep, very true. Very true. So they go there, but then they turn around and say, you know what? Let's trade back.
Yeah.
Bills, call them up. Hey, we'll give you a second-round pick at 56, another second-round pick at 62, and we'll give you a fourth-round pick. That one that you gave us, we'll give back to you.
That trade.
But in return for a third-round pick, number 41, and a seventh round. So essentially, the Bears fall back in the second. They move up from the third to the second, and then they jump from the seventh to the fourth. So that's essentially how it plays out.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of that trade.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you because I'm looking now. So they moved back from 41. Alfred Collins, I thought, would have been a fine pick there. He went 2 picks later. JT Tuimalu went a couple picks later. That's a need at defensive end, pass rush. Nick Scourton, another defensive end, pass rusher I wanted. He went right after that. But I mean, even at 56, and we'll see what Ozzie Trapilo does. But they could have had Tate Rutledge, the guard from Georgia, who went to the Lions. I know the whole mullet thing and everything, but he's a solid guard. And even if Joe Tooney does sign an extension, which we all expect to happen, having that guard depth is not the worst thing. So I'm curious, what does it tell you though that they traded back and picked an offensive tackle? Because Braxton Jones is not going to be ready for OTAs and minicamp. Kieran Amagaji's got work to do. And a lot of people project him to be a right tackle.
Yeah, and so looking at what Trapilo did at Boston College, so his first 2 years he played left tackle. Last 2 years he played right tackle.
Yeah.
His dad was a tackle for the Saints back in the 90s. I like that the pedigree is there. He's a big dude. He is a monster
6'8"
of an offensive lineman. But you could definitely tell there was some movement limitations to his game. Just looking at the limited tape that
Yeah.
they were showing, and I'll be honest, like not a player that I was necessarily anticipating even being on the Bears' radar. I thought Urshery out of Minnesota was going to be
Yeah.
probably the more likely tackle prospect for them, and he ended up going to the Texans at 48.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, a ton of defensive linemen off the board between even T.J. Sanders with the Bills taking him at defensive tackle at 41. You have Alfred Collins, you have uh, Izuraku, like you mentioned, the Ohio State edge, Nick Scorton, Oladejo from UCLA. So, I mean, you're talking 5, 6, 7 names that were off the board. You had Mike Green there as well at 56 that you could have
Yeah.
taken. But
Well, okay.
again, I mean, he fell. I know there were
Yeah.
the off the field issues that probably took him off the board altogether,
Yeah.
given Ryan
100%.
Poles' overall thoughts on having good character guys in that locker room. So and you could even argue, and again, I know the medicals probably played into this. It definitely played into this. But then Will Johnson, who was talked
Yeah.
about as a potential top 15 pick, falling all the way to 47 to the Cardinals, where, okay, you picked a corner later. You picked a guy with a lot of athletic, traits that might translate really well, but it just felt like a disaster board between the time that the Bears traded that pick and by the time that they ended up picking up Trapillo. It just
Yeah.
did not work in their favor. It was just one guy after another where I'm just crossing off names with who I thought would be on the Bears' radar. And, that's what we end up with. Thankfully, Seth Rollins made it a fantastic pick. I loved every minute of that. But I don't mind it, but I think that this is a player that you're probably not going to see a lot of production out of until year 2. I think there's a little
Yeah.
too much to work on to say, okay, this is a guy we can rely on right out of the gate.
Yeah. I mean, like, it does open the door though to move Darnell Wright, which I wouldn't. I'd keep him at right tackle, but it's like, I don't know. Like Ben Johnson said, man, there's no depth chart. They're going to see the competition is going to be quote unquote interesting to him. Um, but yeah, I probably would have gone pass rush there. Maybe a little, there was a couple guys that could have been taken. I'm wondering if the Bears had their eye on someone and he was taken. They didn't want to trade back again. I don't know. I mean, well, obviously got to give him a shot, but we'll see. 6'8". Sometimes it could be a negative. He's tall, but it could be
Yeah.
a negative for you on his offensive tackle. And I have to watch a little more tape on him. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of this, but I'm also not like we're gonna write him off just yet. We'll see. But they got Braxton, they got Kieran, they got Ozzie, and they got Darnell Wright now as their primary 4 tackles. And who knows? Maybe he comes in right away as a swing tackle.
It's possible. I
Yeah,
mean, if there's one thing the Bears have needed over the last few years, it's depth at tackle. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so
Oh
they
yeah,
got that covered.
yeah.
Uh,
And he's not
but
hurt either. They didn't draft him hurt, so
yeah, that works out too. So we don't have to worry about super green player coming out. But again, it's still just a lot of question marks at tackle. A lot to wonder, like you mentioned, with Amagaji, like it was bad last year. It was really bad. And
yeah,
the question now, how much better is he going to be in his second season? I'm afraid of answering that because truly
yeah.
I don't know.
He does get the full training camp, which will help. But like you said, I mean, what we've seen, whether it's his fault or not, I mean, I don't know. And they spent what, a 3rd round pick on him? Was it a third
Yeah.
round? Yeah. Hopefully he does well, but I mean, it's gonna be a big offseason for him, especially.
Yeah. He definitely has his work cut out for him, especially with Trapillo being there as well, because
Yeah.
now it's going to be a lot of fight at left tackle. Because I mean, Darnell Wright's got it down. That's
Yeah.
his spot, and I don't
Uh,
think nothing is going to change that.
I wouldn't change it.
No, not at all. And I don't even want to hear about shifter. Oh, go from right to left. No, we're not
Yeah.
playing that game. We're not
I
playing
wouldn't.
carousel on the offensive
Yeah.
line again. But along with that trade, the Bears also get number 62. Um, I have to vent here. I really wanted RJ Harvey,
Okay.
the the running back out of UCF. He goes 2
Yep.
picks earlier. Again,
Yeah.
just snipe after snipe after snipe. He's going to be a stud in
Yep.
Denver, and I cannot wait to watch him. But Shamar Turner is the pick, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. A lot of Texas A&M guys going early in this draft.
Yeah.
So that was number 3. That was the third defensive lineman in the first 2 rounds for Texas
Yep.
A&M, and uh, for uh, I'll bleep the description that was described of Shamar Turner as a player. A bleeping a-hole
Yeah.
is the way that his play was described, that he's just a pit bull and will do whatever it takes. And lo and behold, about 5 seconds after he was drafted, here's video of him punching a dude in the nuts.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, but violence, man. That's what Dennis Allen wants, and
yeah,
I like this pick. I thought it's a great pick. I don't know. You look at him on tape, man, and you know he's got the injury. He had a little bit of an injury. I think it's a rotator cuff or no, so he had something wrong with him. Um, but he could have been. I mean, early second, late first. There were some mocks that had him going late first round. You know, as early as a month ago. So I mean, he plays with violence. You watch it, you could see in his attitude. When we were on the Zoom with him, he was just every time he answers, like, I can't believe it. I can't, like, he was so excited. And he even had like a quote about something like he goes after offensive linemen because they aren't worthy or something. I don't know. He's a badass. And I think learning from Grady Jarrett is really going to help him. I do think it puts a little pressure now on Gervon Dexter. And I think the Bears might, Dennis Allen might look at this as an opportunity to put Dexter at defensive end at times, with Billings and Grady Jarrett and now Turner. I think this guy, I think he could come in and make an impact right away. I think we could kind of see like maybe not a full Mark Anderson 2006 season, but like impact, gets to the quarterback, creates some havoc in the backfield. I love his attitude talking to him. He's like jacked up to play. He knows what a Dennis Allen defense is. And we shouldn't be shocked that, Dennis Allen likes that violence that he even said, I want to go out and kill, like kill, just kill. I'm like, sign me up for this guy, man. I mean, I think they got a good defensive tackle who, he played defensive end as well a little bit, played a
yeah.
little edge. He said he moved to defensive tackle and played more so he could help his draft stock, I believe was the quote. So got some experience. I think this is going to be fun. Where he's going to line up these guys on the defensive line, Dennis Allen, is going to be kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, and as far as his first strength being listed as playing with a relentless level of aggression,
Yeah.
we're talking about a guy who had more unsportsmanlike penalties than he did sacks in
Yeah.
his career.
Well, the first one he will have in the NFL, Dennis Allen will put his ass on the bench and say, "You ever do that again?" You know what I mean?
You're out of here.
He's kind of
Yeah,
got the right coaching for that, I think.
he does. And all the talk is as long as he can keep the temper under control, he could be a fantastic player. And if that's all it's going to take is for that to be it, then I'm here for it. But
Yeah.
again, just I want to see the bull in a china shop, and I think that's easily what the Bears are going to get here, even if it's in a situational sense early on in his career. If he's just that third down rusher and just trying to be a chaotic 3 technique to blow things up.
Which they need.
Yeah, they which they've needed for a very long time.
Yeah.
Even on top of, just being able to, get in there and stop the run as well. Really, a lot of it's been his weaknesses have been more on the pass rush, which you normally don't see with guys like that.
Yeah. Love
But
that.
again, it's things that can be taught, for sure. And sitting at 6'3", 290, he'll probably add a little bit more bulk, I would have to imagine, if they're going to keep him at defensive tackle. Or, maybe they do push him outside. Maybe this is something like, Dio, where they're going to move him around similar to how Dio was in Indianapolis, where
Yeah.
he's playing inside, he's playing outside. Again,
They
there's
have
that
options.
uncertainty to what the Bears could potentially throw at you at a front. And again, when you're playing with guys like this that are just high motor 24/7, it's going to cause problems.
It, as long as they don't have Andrew Billings dropping a coverage a couple times a year,
Oh,
or
geez.
Demarcus Walker dropping a coverage against the Browns, like I think the Bears will be fine.
Yeah,
With I don't think that that's how it's going to do that.
I would sure hope so.
Well, and they talked about all options with the pass rush. They want to get the pass rush better. They want to get the pass rush better. Like, you're loading up on the line with some of these big guys, these nasty guys. Like Grady Jarrett plays with a high motor. Turner plays with a high motor. You get that from Dexter, and you get that, we know Billings has it. Get that from Deo, and you get a normal year from Montez Sweat. They're going to need that because it's a bad pass rush last year.
Yeah, and this comment here, and it's a good point to
That's
bring
what,
up,
yeah,
is like there was a stress fracture injury that
yeah,
he never completely healed from.
yeah.
And so despite seeing this, very aggressive player on the field, it's also okay, maybe he wasn't 100% for a very long time, and they get that right. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a lingering issue, because stress fractures can turn into that very easily. um it still is very much a possibility that there's some um more talent that the Bears could tap into with how they plan to utilize him. So I was good with it. It was definitely like, okay, about time they finally got to the defensive line.
Trenches, yeah.
uh, so, but really from there on, because they don't pick again until round number 4,
Yeah.
and they start to like look at like, okay, what are our needs? And shockingly, they start to go to the needs, and they go Ruben Hippolyte II, out of Maryland, and a probably going to be a weak side linebacker, which the Bears do need right now. It's Noah Sewell, I believe,
Yeah.
is the slated starter.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that did everything for the Terrapins on the field as a middle linebacker. And now the question becomes, can he make that shift? He's very shifty, speedy, kind of undersized. I'd have to imagine this was immediately put in as like, okay, we know where he's going. We're gonna see if it can translate well, and hope for the best, because I don't think Noah Sewell is it at the weak side.
Probably
And
not.
this is probably their backup plan, all things considered.
Well, I think we could kind of combine this one and Zay Frazier in the 5th round, the defensive back. You look at both these guys, speed. That's why they're speed, ability to play special teams early on. That's pretty much what it was. And Dennis Allen has said, in the offseason, the Bears need to upgrade speed. Ryan Poles referenced it in the press conference on Saturday night that they wanted to get faster on defense. Hippolyte was getting bad grades. Might have been a little bit of a reach. I think the Beast had him like 300 or something around there, like player
Ooh.
rank, or not 200s. I don't know what it was, somewhere. I saw it was like a consensus big board had him pretty high, but who knows? I think it was speed
Mhm.
for him and Frazier, the defensive back at UTSA. And you're probably looking at them, backups, learn, contribute on special teams, add some speed to our defense. I mean, if Zay Frazier is playing, meaningful reps, that means you probably have 2 to 3 injuries, in the secondary. So that's probably not great. Nothing against them. But then again, you look at Frazier too, lengthy corner, big corner. Al Harris loved him. With Hippolyte, I'm curious to see outside the speed, the tackling, the instincts. But yeah, you're right. He's probably gonna slot in there, Noah, like in taking over for Noah Sewell. But you got to look. They're also playing nickel defense a lot too,
Yeah.
or probably plan to be eventually. So yeah, I just think those 2 picks are probably more lottery ticket. Let's get some speed in here and see what we got.
Yeah, and Zay Frazier is interesting. I mean, 6'3", just ridiculous arm length.
Yeah.
32 and 7/8 inch arms, a 4.36 40-yard dash. Somebody called him a young giraffe, that he still he still hasn't kind of like grown into like
Bro,
the ability, but at the same time, he's going to be 25 in October. So
yeah,
this is not a young player either. So now the question becomes, how much can he turn around and kind of grow into that frame and that ability? Because he racked up a pretty good season in 2024. He had 6 interceptions, 15 passes defended, and again bounced around a bit as well, going from community college to, I mean, he started at Southern
I
Illinois.
don't know.
He
Yeah,
was he was a
six
redshirt in
games,
2019.
4 games, I think.
Yeah, and then jumps to Coffeyville Community College, and then here he is. His first opportunity to start was 2014 or
Yeah,
2024, excuse me.
2024. Yeah,
And this is what ends up happening is he puts together this crazy season, but I have to wonder, is it, just a fact of, you're playing more the lower end FBS and, playing to guys that definitely do not have that size or speed, and you're able to use that, athleticism to your advantage? Or is this somebody that's going to be able to take on the bigger players at the next level and really grow into that? And that's why I kind of got a kick out of the giraffe comment, because it's true. I mean, you
yeah,
do not see corners like this. You just don't.
yeah. But the length, yeah, you like the length, but you gotta be able to move. You gotta be able to cover. You gotta be able to stick with your guy. So, like you said, he's still young. He's played a lot of football. Yeah, to me, it's kind of screams special teams depth to start off.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll see what ends up happening. But again, you have to be at least a little bit interested just based on what he comes in as, in terms of that athleticism and that measurement profile. Because again, you just don't see it even in the top players in these classes. They are just not that size. So
Yeah,
curious to see what happens there. And then round 6, Luke Newman, guard out of Michigan State, very much a zone scheme offensive lineman. Probably another reach. I know by a lot of standards he was pushed as more of the undrafted free agent level player. And Bears are like, hey, we need a guard. We need
yeah.
10 guys to fill up this room, and he ends up
Come on
being the pick
down.
there.
Yeah, well, now we're getting into the range where it's like, okay, like
Yeah.
you got some guys, you're gonna get a shot here. Let's see what you can do. Offensive line depth. I mean, they still got Bill Murray. They still have blank on his name now. Doug Kramer, I
Yep.
believe. They still have a couple guys. And now you're gonna be looking at a guy who's be fighting for a roster spot, potentially, practice squad, but you get him in, see what he's got. And so I haven't watched a lot. I'll admittedly, I haven't watched a lot of tape on him. I haven't really looked a lot on him, so I don't know too much. But yeah, he's got to slot in at a guard he'll play.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that probably makes the most sense for him. And um I will say though, I know it's picks that don't always fall and stick on a roster, but finally took him 7 rounds.
This is one of my favorite picks. I like this pick.
Okay, so let's hear about the Bears 7th round pick.
You want to pronounce his name because I am going to
I was
butcher
hoping
that.
you would. No,
It is
Kyle Monangai.
Kyle Monagai. Yeah, and you're right. It took him 7 rounds, but like you mentioned earlier in this podcast, like they were probably sniped a couple times. And I saw people on Twitter like, here's your 7th round running back, Ryan Bowles. And I don't know, man. Watch the tape. Like he seems like a bowling ball. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've seen highlights of him. He seems like a bowling ball. And I mean, the Bears got, a little bit of a crowded running back room, but we talked all draft process. We're like, they're going to add a running back. They're going to add a running back. They get sniped. And watching him a little bit on the tape, man, I think he's got a chance. I think he's got a chance to stick. I think, Homer's got some special teams value. Roshan, you're concerned about the concussions, a couple of injuries. But yeah, I like this pick. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's one of my favorites of the draft. I think it's such a deep draft class this year for running backs that you see like, okay, like here we go, 7th round pick, but like there's a lot of still good, decent backs. Brashard Smith out of SMU went in the 7th round. It's such a deep running back class. It's kind of unfortunate for him that it was so deep that he had to wait. Devin Neal, 6th round, Ollie Gordon, 6th round. Like, yeah, I like this pick. I think he could be a factor here.
Yeah, and the Rutgers is like the redheaded stepchild of the
Yeah,
Big Ten. Everyone just kind of forgets that they're there
yeah,
for obvious reason. It's been a while since they've been relevant, but again, a guy that produced and was a big part of that offense with the Scarlet Knights. He had 1,200 yards in 23. Again, came back with 1,200 yards and 13 rushing touchdowns this past season. In 2024, he was first team All Big Ten in the 2024 season, and I don't think a lot of people realize that that was the case, even with all of these other running backs that were playing in the Big Ten. Even talking about Judkins and Travion Henderson at Ohio State, he beat them out. Yeah, obviously that doesn't necessarily translate to NFL, but again, like you mentioned, a bowling ball type player. I mean, he's just a little ball of muscle. He's 5'8", 211 pounds. Like he's a tiny little monster. And yeah, didn't have the greatest 40-yard dash time. That probably hurt him. Ran a 4.6, but he will pick up the yardage. He'll bounce off. He'll break through tackles despite the size. And again, probably going to fit into more of a short yardage
yeah.
situation type back, which I don't know how is going to work with that size. And there have been moments where he just kind of pauses a little bit too much on finding the running lane, which scares me a little bit because in the NFL, you're never going to have that extra half second to figure out which lane you need to hit. But all things considered, I'm good with it. I like the pick too. I wish there was a little bit more size there, but again, in round 7, I just don't think you're going to find it.
No,
But
it's a good
this is a
value
guy
pick.
that produced in one of the biggest conferences in the nation.
Yeah, it's a 7th round pick too. It's a lottery ticket, and
Right.
like you said, you got a guy who produced in the Big Ten. And yeah, there's some things he could probably work on. The vision probably could use a little work, and hesitation, the quick step, and like you mentioned, in the NFL level, going to take some time. But he's still a bowling ball, and I still think he could, like Bears Junkie 55 Hall of Fame here said, like, think he can contribute this year. I think so too. I think he's going to contribute this year. Maybe it's like an RB3. They're going to keep Homer for special teams, I believe.
Probably.
They'll keep Roshan, and they'll have Swift. Ethan Willard will be the guy that will he make the practice squad or have a spot. But yeah, I like this pick. I think this was a fun type of pick.
And really, he didn't have a bad game. There wasn't really a game that he got stuffed across the board this past year. His low water point was 72 yards on 19 carries and a touchdown against Wisconsin in 2024. I'm gonna see what he did against some of the tougher teams because I'm pretty sure that the year before he had a pretty darn good season. He did.
Production.
159 yards against Ohio State.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Uh,
Production.
Penn State, he got stifled against Penn State and Iowa, 39 yards apiece in both of those. But then Pinstripe Bowl, 25 carries for 163 yards and a touchdown against the University of Miami. So, I mean, all things considered, he has shown that he can get the job done. Obviously, Rutgers not a team that screams, solid football school.
We gotta check the demographics on how many people from New Jersey listen to this podcast.
we need all their opinions on this. But I am curious. I think he'll slot in as a fun little RB3. And I think that given the preseason and the way that lays out right now, that we could be in for some fun as well to see what exactly he can bring to the table in some extended action, because I don't think DeAndre Swift is obviously going to be getting much. And for
No.
all we know, he could push Roshan Johnson. We've
Yeah.
seen it time and time again. 7th-round picks at running back, they hit more often than not.
Well, and here's the other thing too to keep in mind. Like next year, there'll be another good running back class. And a
Right.
year after, you know what I mean? You'll always be able to find or try to find a running back, in the draft in the future, just how kind of positions going. Um, I think, but before we wrap it up, I think, kind of seeing the rumors on Chubb, the running back, Nick Chubb, the former Cleveland Brown running back. And there's, I forgot the station in Cleveland that said, there's talks with
Fan.
the fan, there's talks with the NFC North. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd be intrigued on a vet minimum 1-year deal, but here's the thing, man. Like Chubb completely tore that knee up in 2023. It was a terrible injury to undergo. What did he do last year? He came back towards the end of
Broken
the
leg,
season.
broken foot.
Yeah, broken foot. I don't know, man. Maybe a camp body. I don't know. I don't know, honestly. 102 carries last year, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns. It's tough, those injuries, man. And especially your running back now, what he is. Sorry, I'm clicking his profile. How old is he?
He's
Born
31,
95,
30 or 31.
30. Yeah, 30. We'll see. I mean, I wouldn't be totally opposed to it on a vet minimum deal. Worst thing, you cut him after training camp, but it might be a good guy to have in the locker room, having your rotation maybe.
So you have Nick Chubb as one option,
Yeah,
and behind door number 2 of the veteran options right now, in terms of the 2 that are out there, J.K. Dobbins. Again, another injury riddled guy. Had
yeah,
a resurgent season in LA. They obviously kick him to the curb. Here comes Amari and Hampton and Najee Harris, and it's a brand new running back room in LA for the Chargers. But again, those are your options, really, in terms of high production running backs in the veteran market. And I don't know who would be the bigger fit. I want to say that Chubb is the better fit, just based on more of like the rough and tumble, but that was not the rough and tumble Chubb that we saw in
yeah,
2024 coming off of that knee. And I don't necessarily know if we'll ever see that again. And there's also the trade market that's out there as well. There's been talk about Zach Charbonnet or Ken Walker out in Seattle. Brees Hall's been rumored to be on the trade block. I'd much rather spend a pick and go after one of those guys
oh
versus
yeah,
someone that is more in this injury prone state of mind over the last couple of years of their careers. And I don't know if either is going to happen. Something tells me there's some contentness with
yeah,
what the Bears have right now and what the coaching staff is working with and what Eric Bieniemy can do. Uh, I don't know. I'd be shocked if they go with a big move at this point. It would be fun, don't get me
yeah.
wrong, but I would be shocked.
It's Dobbins last year, not what 925, 905,
Yeah,
4.6 yards a carry. He had a solid season last year, but
he did.
again, injury prone. Can he do it again? Um, I don't know. If you could get a day 3, like a 4th round pick for Charbonnet or Walker, I think Walker might be a little more, probably a 3rd rounder, maybe. I'd probably rather go that route. Yeah, maybe Brees Hall. I think they're content. I think they're content with what they got so far. And doesn't Dobbins kind of remind you of Swift a little bit though, in a way?
He does, and
Yeah.
that's part of my concern. Is I just don't feel as though it's the right lightning and thunder fit there
Yeah.
with what they probably need, and they need more of that bruiser, which is why I would love, if they're going to go the signing route, it's going to be Chubb, but if they go the trade route, I would love to see Brees Hall. I know it'll probably cost a 2nd-round pick, not ideal, but if you can get him locked in on a long-term contract, you're reaching a point where you can probably also get out of Swift's deal without too much damage and be a nice trade-off there, because Brees Hall is a hell of a player and he's getting wasted in
Yeah.
New York,
But
and especially now with Justin Fields, it's
yeah.
gonna be just as bad. So I wanna see it. I really wanna see it. But I also know that at this point, it's probably a pipe dream.
Of the undrafted, I mean, I know Jamal Williams is it's similar to Swift, but I mean, he's a guy that's still out there as well.
Has those ties to Ben Johnson.
Yeah, has ties to Ben Johnson. I kind of like the Seattle backs. I love Charbonnet because he came in when Walker got hurt last year, and
Tore it up.
he tore it up. But would Seattle part ways? Why, you know what I mean? Like I know it's got new staff, new quarter or whatever, new quarterback. I don't know. It's tough. It's every year the speculations running rampant right now. But these reports are true. It sounds like Chubb, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think a little bit more speculation was added to
Yes.
the fire than it needed to be, and
Yes.
I wouldn't be shocked if this was just a whole bunch of nothing for Nick Chubb potentially going to the Bears. And they only said an NFC North team. There could be three other teams here. Could easily be maybe the Packers. I don't know. They seem pretty happy with Lynch
Yeah.
there too as the backup. Um,
Minnesota just
maybe
paid.
Minnesota.
They just
I
paid a
don't.
couple guys though.
They did. That's true. And
Detroit?
not no no
No,
because
see?
that's still RB3. Yeah, man,
It would be I think if we had to rank them, like, who would be on the NFC
Bears are
North?
still at the top.
Bears at the top, I'd probably say the Pa Packers, then the Vikings, then the Lions.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Or it just could be, like you said, speculation.
yeah. Gotta
Speculation
again,
season.
get the excitement rolling for where are they gonna go? Ugh,
Yeah,
always the Bears. Always the
yeah,
Bears. They're
yep,
always the team. They know they can dangle anything in front of the fan base and they're gonna take it, whether it's true or not. Uh myself included, but hey. Yeah. So yeah, Zach Charbonnet. There you go. You
there
got
you go.
another Charbonnet
He's good. I
fan
think
on the
he's
bench.
good, man.
He is. He is. And
Yeah,
young. He's only in his third year, so still on that rookie deal. So we could probably get him for a third or fourth. I would have to imagine based on where they're at. But who knows? Again, I don't think going to go in with this same running back room once training camp starts. It's just I can't see them spending significant
can try. Yeah,
funds or assets to make a change, but we'll see. Stranger
yeah,
things have happened, and
yeah,
I know the draft didn't go a lot of ways that we expected it to. So, hey, maybe they got some more surprises up their sleeve. But the draft in the books. They're going to get into mini camps. They're going to get into all the fun here over the course of the next few weeks up at Hallis Hall, and then before you know it, we'll be talking some training camp and
yeah,
everything that comes along with that. See exactly how good this rookie class is, along with the coaching staff, and getting this team into tip-top shape out of a 5-win season and hopefully into a lot more victories in 2025. So that's going to do it here for the Bear Report. We do appreciate each and every one of you listening in and watching live if you have done that as well. And we'll be back with more coverage of the Bears as we continue the roll on in this 2025 NFL offseason and see what else, again, they might have up their sleeve as they come in towards mini camps. For Zack Pearson, I'm Steven Johnson. Thanks again and have a fantastic week. We'll talk to you next time right here at the Bear Report, and check us out, bearreport.com.